Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 17th Board of Education meeting. We have 7 board members present, none absent. We've been in closed session since 6:30 this evening to discuss closed session minutes review and release, property acquisition, lease, and purchase, and the approval of the November 26, 2013 closed session minutes. We all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is the special public hearing for the adoption of the 2013 Certificate of Levy. So with that, we have 7 board members present, none absent. And then let me turn it over to Mr. Purnell.
Yes, we'd like to turn this over to Chris Welton, who will do a short overview and presentation on the tax levy.
We have the 2013 tax levy. As you know, 84% of our revenues are generated from property taxes. The board approved the tentative tax levy on November 12th. The levy will be filed at the county on Friday in order to be in compliance with the levy being filed by the last Tuesday in December. The Truth in Taxation law requires a public notice and a public hearing if the tax levy is more than 105%. Our levy is 4.2% increase, so we are not required, but we did give notice, and we are having the public hearing this evening. We do that for transparency purposes. The tax levy timeline, as you know, the CPI came out in January at 1.7%. In November, the board approves the tentative levy. December, we have the Truth in Taxation notice, public hearing, and adoption of the levy. We file at the county. Then in very late March, usually around spring break, last week of March, we received the final EAV and tax extensions from DuPage County. And then the first collections happen in June of 14 and then in September of 14. The tax cap law limits the total operating tax extension. The tax cap law does not cap an individual's property tax bill or an individual's property tax assessment. The tax cap is on existing property. It does not apply to new construction. Debt service is also outside the tax cap. The 1.7% was the CPI from 2012. That impacts the current levy year 2013. Because the taxes come in June, the final month of the fiscal year, and September, we tend to equate this levy with budget year 2014-15. Over the past 5 years, CPI has averaged 1.8%. This diagram, where the current spot we're at is the middle diagram with existing EAV decreasing, which results in increasing tax rates. This is just another illustration of that. When EAV is increasing, like it was from 2005 to 2008, the tax rates are decreasing. As EAVs fall, tax rates are increasing, and this happens because tax extension is the product of EAV and tax rate. So as far as determining the tax levy, there are two unknown factors that we have to estimate: the EAV and new construction. The EAV, the EAV lags the market in that it is based on the sales of homes in 2010, 2011, and 2012. And so we are estimating a 5% decrease in EAV. New construction is the other unknown factor that we are estimating. And this shows a little bit of history where 2009 we were at about 24 million, 2010 19 million, 2011 we would be at about 15 million without the hospital property, and then 2012 about 20 million. So we are estimating new construction EAV at 22 million, but we've levied for an additional 23 million in new construction EAV on top of the 22, so our levy can cover 45 million in new construction. The additional amount provides for the possibility of underestimating new construction. No matter what the amount the district levies, the counties will only extend the increase allowable under the tax cap. On this slide, we're showing what we're estimating the extension actually will be, assuming a 5% decrease in EAV and a 22 million in new construction EAV. We're estimating a 3.24% overall increase. However, about 1% of that is related to new construction. Most taxpayers will see an increase of 2.23%. On a $300,000 house, the estimated increase is $107.27. The tax levy is a request. It's a placeholder until the county determines the final EAV rates, new construction, and the 2013 extension. The county will determine the extension within the tax cap limitations. Regardless of the levy amount, the district will only receive what is allowed under the tax cap.
Any questions for Mr. Welton? Chris?
We talked about the Hub Group building, Chris. I just drove by there the other day, and there's desks in there, and they're moving in. When does it have to be occupied to be on the tax rolls? Is it by the end of the calendar year? Or?
January, so that there's a chance, I guess, for next year that it would be prorated. But
that's another reason to make sure that we have a cushion
Right.
in our levy, because if that property were to come on, it would be a significant amount of EAV that we want to make sure we capture.
That's right.
Yeah, let me, Mr. Welton, so to summarize what you've said, we're levying on existing property an additional 1.7%, and then we're adding to that to make sure that we capture all of the new construction that's gone on in District 205 during the year 2013. And it sounds like we're being very conservative there by levying approximately double of what we believe the new construction was, because we just can't be sure what it was, and then the county will scale it back to exactly what that new construction was during 2013. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. Go ahead.
So it's 45 million for new construction. On page 12, at the bottom, it still says 22 million. Estimates they based are 22 million in new construction. Should that be 45?
The 22 million is used in this calculation on this slide, where you could see that in this slide, we're estimating an extension of 102,347,109. The actual levy is 103,317,772. This levy could capture 45 million in new construction.
But there isn't, I mean, there's most likely not 45 million in new construction.
Correct.
You got your 22 million in estimates from the townships, is that correct?
I got an estimate from York Township
Okay.
to help to come up with the 22 million.
Okay, but just in case it's a little more, we were very conservative in the amount that we levied for. We won't recognize revenue most likely anywhere near an additional new construction of 45 million. Chris?
I think there's another point in here too that jumps out too. When you talk about 1.7%, that's on existing EAV from an operating budget standpoint, correct, Chris? Right. So, but the interest and principal on the bonds that were referendum bonds that were passed 06, 02, and before is growing at 7%.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that the taxpayers understand that, you know, our operating levy may be going up at 1.7%, but the tax bill may end up going up a little bit more than that because of the bond and interest. As we have talked about in prior meetings, there are significant maturities ramping over the next 8 years. And so they will probably continue to outpace the growth in the operating levy for the foreseeable future. And we are keeping an eye on ways we might mitigate some of that.
Right. We're estimating that most taxpayers will see a 2.23% increase. That's made up of the 1.7 CPI and additional amount for the debt service.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Welton? Next on the agenda is public comments as they pertain. We're going to have 2 public comment sessions tonight. These public comments they pertain specifically to this public hearing for the adoption of the 2013 tax levy. Now, I have one blue slip of paper from Gilbert Fisher. Mr. Fisher, does your comment pertain to the levy? So please come up to the microphone. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
We had approximately 100 of these new houses built in Elmhurst this year, the mega houses. How soon do we get taxes on those houses?
If I think we established if they're occupied by January, because we're levying to capture this new construction, we would receive property tax revenues with the bills that go out in April.
Okay, thank you. Press the button, I'm on. Good evening, Gil Fisher. I live on the northeast side of Elmhurst here. And District 205 is like a big black hole. You keep throwing money into it, it goes faster and deeper and disappears. You people are in a very nice building here. A building that you basically stole from me and the other taxpayers. You bought it with a intent to have it for special ed kids, and it didn't work out, so it was about $3 million wasted. Tax money wasted. It's unbelievable to me how well-educated people can do that and just throw away money. I don't want my taxes increased. In the last 4 years, my taxes on my house has gone up, and yet the value has gone down. You have a very good government system, then even if my house is worth nothing, my taxes will go up because you have the power to do it. You have a law in place to keep getting more money. It's not right. There is only so much money in the world. They're making up false economies now, false currencies. if you should be aware of what's going on in the world. First of all, in Elmhurst, in my northeast side of Elmhurst, one bank owns 40 homes or apartments. He has gone to Section 8 housing. Now, I don't know if you people get taxes from federal housing assistance or anything like that. That's not up to me, that's up to you to worry about. But the type of people that are coming into Elmhurst because you are raising taxes and getting rid of the hardworking people. My wife and I worked all our lives. Our house is paid for, yet we have trouble making the taxes. So people like me are moving out. The houses are going into foreclosure, and you're getting Section 8 housing. You people are directly putting our teachers in danger by getting these type of people into schools in Elmhurst. I'm asking you to think about that on one thing. I am an immigrant. The first years of my life was in Germany. When my family immigrated in the early 30s, 1930s, get away from Germany, I'd be yelled at by my mother like crazy. Sonny, when you're in the house, you speak German. When you go out of the house, you speak English, because it's a religious thing to be in America. It's a wealthy thing. It's an honor to be in America. When you step out of the house, you speak English. It's a privilege to be here. Not anymore. My parents were wrong, my mother was wrong. Now, English is a dirty language. We have immigrants here that say we have to speak their language, their customs, not ours. I'm asking you people not to raise the taxes again.
Thank you.
Just one more comment about teachers. I worked for the federal government for 50 years, and every time I got a raise in pay, I took home less money. You got a nickel, it costs you 10 cents in taxes. You can support the teachers without raising the taxes to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments regarding the tax levy? All right. Are there any other items regarding the tax levy? Hearing none, then I declare the public hearing for the adoption of the 2013 tax levy adjourned, and we can return to our regular meeting. And in our regular meeting, next on the agenda is recognition of Sandburg Middle School for,
Yeah, I think we need a vote.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. All right. We need a roll call vote to adjourn the,
No, you're good for adjournment to go into the regular session.
to go into regular session. Okay. So, Mrs. Stufen, will you call the roll, please?
To start, okay. No, we don't have to have a motion. Okay. Dr. Harrell. Here. Ms. Bastido. Here. Mr. McDonough.
Here? Yes?
Ms. Ebner.
Yes.
Mr. Bloom? And, okay. I can just say here. And then President Collins.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now we have returned to regular session. And the next item on our regular session meeting is the recognition of Sandburg Middle School as a blue ribbon school. So, Mr. Pernod?
Yes, it's really our pleasure this evening to recognize Sandburg as one of our blue ribbon schools. Elmhurst should be very proud that over the last 3 years, we have been recognized by the U.S. Department of Education for 4 schools in our district being blue ribbon schools. And the latest, I'm proud to say, is Sandburg Middle School. And so with that, I know Amy Reed has brought some people and has a short presentation that they would like to say. So Amy, you want to? I believe there's also, this is a multimedia presentation, so.
So good evening. Members of the board, Superintendent Purnell, I want to formally thank you for recognizing the Sandburg Middle School accomplishment. It was a tremendous honor for our teacher, Tracy Morriser, and me to head to Washington, D.C. to accept the award on behalf of the Sandburg community. So on Friday, December 6th, we had the opportunity to locally celebrate our Blue Ribbon Award with members of the board, as well as administration, and the DuPage Regional Superintendent. In preparation for our celebration, we found that students were still asking what this award is all about. They kept asking, yeah, we got an award, what does that mean? So as I explained during this all-school assembly, the process towards becoming a Blue Ribbon starts with a nomination from the Illinois State Board of Education based on consistent, strong academic performance over the course of a number of years. As our Blue Ribbon Committee knows, we also had the task of completing a lengthy written application process in which we described our traditions, the nature of our community and students we serve, summarized the school's strengths and accomplishments, and of course, focused on what makes our school worthy of the National Blue Ribbon status. At this time, I'd like to publicly thank those committee members for their contributions. Nicole Boyle, Caroline Brannick, Terry Cohen, Frank Dahlman, Carrie Emmerson, Christy Evers, Kelly Frederick, Jeff Gale, Gina Hughes, Liz Cornacker, Liz Marcellus, Jessica Null, Sarah Pauley, Julie Rolls, and Brittany Stearns. And rather than trying to summarize the almost 5,500 words that this team wrote about being worthy of the Blue Ribbon status, I'd like to show a video that we shared with our students at the all-school assembly.
Please report to the auditorium for the Blue Ribbon celebration.
Mr. Gale, where's the Blue Ribbon plaque? I can't find it.
I thought you had it, but I'll look.
I can't find it! So as I said at the assembly, yes, we work hard, but we also have a lot of fun doing it. I think one of the most rewarding things about this video, too, is the students are still talking about it. They just found it really neat to see themselves in it, see Mr. Gale and I have a little bit of fun. So I'd really like to extend a special thank you to our teacher, Robbie Phillip, for helping us put that together. He did an outstanding job. I'd also like to just close by stating to be recognized as one of 3 middle schools in the state of Illinois and one of 19 in the country to receive this is incredible. And to do it 2 times is just a true reflection of our dedication to our academic excellence. So thank you and congratulations to not only the Sandburg community, but to District 205 Board of Education and members of the administration. Thank you, and I'd also like to recognize my assistant, Jeff Gale, and the Sandburg parents and students that came tonight. Thank you.
Don't go too far. Since I have no hope of topping that video, I am going to point out, reiterate a fact that Amy just pointed out, and just read the proclamation. But the fact that I want to point out is how really remarkable becoming a Blue Ribbon school is. There's about 130,000 elementary and high schools in the United States. This year, 286 of them were named Blue Ribbon schools by the U.S. Department of Education. 21 of those 286 were in Illinois, and of the middle school and of the schools in Illinois, only 3 of them were middle schools. So, that's a pretty elite group that Sandburg's in, and it takes an entire community to make a Blue Ribbon school. Great teachers, great administration, great parents, and especially great students. So, we have a proclamation for you. And your school, whereas on November 18th and 19th, 2013, in Washington, D.C., the United States Department of Education and the U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, recognized 236 public and 50 private schools as 2013 National Blue Ribbon Schools. And whereas the Blue Ribbon Award honors public and private elementary, middle, and high schools where students perform at very high levels or where significant improvements are being made in students' levels of achievement. And whereas Secretary Duncan noted, excellence in education matters, and we should honor the schools that are leading the way to prepare students for success in college and careers. National Blue Ribbon schools represent examples of educational excellence, and their work reflects the belief that every child in America deserves a world-class education. And whereas Sandburg Middle School was one of the 20 Illinois schools named among the 210 public and 50 private schools from across the country that were honored as exemplary high-performing schools, and one of only 3 such middle schools honored in the state, and whereas Sandburg Middle School principal Amy Reed, along with faculty member 8th grade math teacher Tracy Morser, accepted the award in the nation's capital on behalf of the entire Sandburg staff, students, and parents. And whereas this school is to be congratulated for their efforts, as this accomplishment brings great pride and prestige to Sandburg Middle School, to District 205, and to our community as a whole. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Unit District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to Sandburg Middle School for this outstanding achievement. Congratulations.
You know what? I would suggest this. Anybody who's in the audience who is from Sandburg, come up and we would like to shake your hand. Staff, parents, every. Congratulations. 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 Way to go.
Congratulations, Nathan.
Congratulations. Way to go, Jeff.
Autographs?
That's it. That was ETC.
Moving on.
Yes.
Next on our agenda are public comments. I don't have any other blue slips of paper. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to make a public comment? Okay. Yeah, we can take a short 30-second break for people that need to get home, do homework. Grade papers, yes. All right, next is the superintendent's communication. Mr. Purnell.
Yes, we have two items under superintendent communication. We're going to start with the annual audit review. Mr. Welton will be walking the board through our annual audit review this evening.
We have the annual audit, which is for fiscal year 2012-13, ending June 30th, 2013. So the first thing I wanted to point out in the audit report is the independent auditor's report from Klein Hall CPAs. The auditing firm is independent. They are hired by the Board of Education to review the finances of the school district. And in the bottom paragraph, which you can't read, but I will read, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund and aggregate remaining fund information of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 as of June 30th, 2013, and the respective changes in financial position for the year then ended in accordance with the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. The next slide I have, I cut a portion of the auditor's letter where they make recommendations every year. It's part of their audit. They make a few recommendations. This one, the unauthorized interfund loans. During a few months of the year, the Transportation and Municipal Retirement Social Security Fund had overall negative cash and investment balances, which constitute unauthorized interfund loans. This is a common comment that school districts receive. This happened in our cash flow low points, which happened to be April and May, and there wasn't enough fund balance or enough cash and investments in those months. We have increased the levies in these funds. Hopefully we will have adequate funds to not run into negative cash positions in April and May moving forward. The other one that they were recommending was about the treasurer's bond, and we've increased the treasurer's bond since the audit has concluded. We have implemented their recommendation to increase that treasurer's bond. The next slide here, this is the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award from the prior year's comprehensive annual financial report. We are applying again for the June 30th, 2013 audit. Helen Perez does does most of the work in order to receive this Certificate of Excellence. And so what this means is that the school district's audit report has extensive amount of information there that is available. The back section in particular, there's a lot of historical and statistical data and information for the community or for anyone really to read and understand more information about the financials of the school district. We've talked about the financials of fiscal 2013 a few different times. We talked about it in July when the fiscal year had just ended, and we talked again about it in August and September with the budget presentations. The year turned out better than expected. It would be really hard to see the numbers here, but overall, revenues exceeded expenditures by $3,136,937, and we had some other financing sources and uses of $2,547,629, which meant that overall our fund balances increased by $5,684,566. That's overall, and we had talked about the better than expected financial fiscal year, and the reasons for that. We had budgeted for the hospital refund coming out of fiscal year 2013. We had expected that would happen, or we had estimated or budgeted for that to happen in the June tax collection, and it actually didn't happen until September. So it actually happened in fiscal year 2014, and we'll see that in next year's audit. In addition, our corporate personal property replacement taxes came in better than expected. Our state revenues came in better than state and federal government. We had some timing. We benefited in this fiscal year from some timing where we received more payments than 1 year's worth of payments. We got 5 categorical quarterly payments instead of 4. So I also have each fund here also broken out. And then the last slide I had, this is out of the audit report, which talks about factors bearing on the district's future. Some of the items listed here, we talk about the tax cap and being limited to CPI increases. The state of Illinois continues to have fiscal instability, and the district expects state revenues to be delayed, and for some categorical aids to be prorated. Legislators are also discussing pension reform, and the district anticipates a possible shifting of the burden of pension costs to local school districts. We know that the law has passed and the governor has signed it. However, it still faces court objections, and so it's still a possibility that some shifting could happen to the local school district. Staffing increases. Staffing is the biggest component of our budget and our projections, and staffing increases will continue to be driven by enrollment growth and the expansion of educational programming to meet the needs of our students. Health insurance premiums are also just health insurance premiums in general trend at a higher rate than CPI, which is our revenue, which we're tied to on the revenue side. And also the expanding use of technology in the delivery of instruction will require additional resources. And the final point talks about the capital maintenance projects, and the long-term facility plan calls for significantly more projects than the amount remains in the fund balances. of the capital projects and life safety funds. So our audit showed that we had a better than expected fiscal year, which stabilized our finances. But moving forward, we still have some concerns about expenditures outpacing revenues. Also, the annual financial report also includes an estimate on the financial profile. And our estimated financial profile score was a 3.8 out of 4, which is estimated to be financial profile designation of recognition, which is the state's highest category. The CAFR will be on this district's, or it is on the board docs, and it will be on the finance department's website this week.
Any questions? Chris, if I may ask you one, I learned when I first joined the board that the auditor sticks in the audit. You were talking about pension laws changing, and in the audit there is a figure for what percentage of our teacher salaries is contributed into the pension fund every year by the income taxpayers of Illinois. The way this works is the funds are directly deposited into the pension fund, but accounting-wise, they come here for an instant, and then we turn them back to the state. And every year that seems to be somewhere between 23 and 26 or 28% of our teachers' salaries are contributed into the pension fund by the income taxpayers. Do you know what that number is for this year?
The audit report has a footnote on the teacher's retirement system on pages 39 through 42, but the percentage you're talking about is called the on behalf contribution. The state of Illinois makes employer pension contributions on behalf of the district. For the year ended June 30, 2013, the state of Illinois contributions were based on 28.05% for this fiscal year. And it also has listed 2011 at 24.91 and, or no, that's 12, and then 2011 at 23.1%. That's on the top of page 40.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's a number that, depending upon what law is passed, could be coming our way eventually.
Well, hopefully not, but it's possible, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Welton? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Yeah, the next item I'm going to turn over to Dr. Johns and David Smith. And we wanted to just share with the board tentative planning that is ongoing related to our mobile learning initiative in the district. Again, this is mostly just information for the Board of Education on planning that is going on. We will be coming back to the board at key points for approval of the plan when that is necessary. But we wanted to give you tonight just an overview of present and future initiatives and mobile learning initiatives. So with that, I'll start out with Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Purnell. The Curricular Technology Committee, the CTC committee, which is composed of classroom teachers, administrators, and support personnel, have been meeting for the past 2 years, not only to work on our technology plan, which is required by state, it's a regulatory piece that we have to comply to, but also to develop a vision for creating more accessible, more frequent, and richer use of technology in our instructional program, not just because it's there, but because we believe it gives a stronger, more thorough academic experience for our students. So what I'd like to do tonight is kind of bring you up to speed on where we're at in the development of the vision. This presentation I'm going to show you was presented we attempted to do it via Google Hangout, but we had so many people turn on their computers at the same time. We weren't able to do it through Google Hangout last week, but it's been presented at all 3 middle schools where a great deal of this work has been taking place. It's been reviewed with the Instructional Technology Committee at York High School, and it was shared with the elementary principals via YouTube. We hope that they will disperse that more readily after the new year. I noticed just before I stood up that we have 10 hits on that video so far. So I think I'm on track to catch up with Psy and Gangnam Style about the turn of the next millennium. And but it does mean the 2 elementary principals looked at it twice, which I think is encouraging. They got my back. I've been saying for a little while that I think we've come across maybe the biggest time of transformation in education we've probably seen in the U.S. since the 1920s, when education beyond grade 6 became mandatory. And it's a crazy intersection. We're moving very quickly, and we have many different flows of traffic that are all kind of converging at the same time. We have higher and higher expectations coming from the reform movement and from legislatures. We have the Park assessment that starts in 2015, but triples in size the next year. And that makes all assessment routines that we've had so far look minor in comparison. We are in the midst, and have been for a couple of years now, implementing new standards, and we have higher and higher levels of accountability. So it really is a tricky time to navigate when moving forward with any major initiative, particularly with technology, which is increasing very rapidly on its own. When in these circumstances, it's important to start with where the kids are. What do the students need? Advisors on the purchase and the acquisition of technology have been telling us for a while now is to make sure we step aside, step away from devices, but start with what kids need first. And what we know, and what we've been talking about in the district for some time now, is students need things that are engaging. They need activities in classrooms that are of high engagement. They have real-world experiences to them that are therefore meaningful in their future lives and they can draw a connection to. When moving into this century, deeper into this century, we know that students are going to need more and more opportunities for real and authentic collaboration, ideally through things like a Google Hangout, but maybe even in collaboratively working on a paper together or a project or a video. Students also need opportunity for frequent feedback on their work. They need communication skills in the newest platforms of communication. They need ability to follow their passions and have some flexibility in their academic area to follow things that are of interest to them. They need organizational tools. That's why we're focusing on middle school. And they also need 21st century technological tools, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The experts tell us that once you get past kind of deep considerations of what students need, and by the way, most of those came from the Curricular Technology Committee, we then need to talk about what teachers need to be effective, how to make all those things happen for students. And first of all is a variety of content. Access to a broad variety of content is essential to keep classroom activities exciting and new and fresh for students. Teachers also need to be able to provide a variety of delivery methods to students with a variety of pedagogical techniques, differentiating for the different needs of students in a class. They also, if as much as possible, to attend to those differentiation needs, the ability to split students up into smaller groupings so they can be more effective, facilitate feedback, and finally, tools for teaching skills, particularly writing, is what we've been seeing, but creation of content. And we can't go much further without talking about what does our district need. And we need to find ways to simplify professional development, find ways to make it more ubiquitous and easy for people to get their hands onto in a variety of different formats. We need to look for operational efficiencies. We need to prepare for assessment changes. The park assessment that is coming in 2015, although not a fait accompli, is likely to be completely an online assessment. And we know we could lose access to our computer labs for up to a month when we give the access at each school when we give the park test. We also know that the EPASS system, that's the Explore, the Plan, the ACT test, are also moving to an online assessment engine. So giving our students as many machines so they can still learn using computers at the same time other students are taking tests, we feel are essential. We also know that there is disequity throughout the district, where some students have lots of access to technology, when some have very little access to technology. And we feel by having a broader outlay of technology across the whole district, more students get to spend more time on technology, essentially bringing up the bottom of access to technology. We need to find ways for cost containment, and we need to have the ability to respond to a changing landscape, knowing that teaching, knowing that delivery of content is changing at a rapid pace, particularly in this country. So this brings us to the question of why. So summing all that up, why do we need to make these big steps into technology? First of all, because we think technology will enable us to better educate children, will help teachers be more effective, and will allow us as a district to be more efficient. And I always slip in equitable as well when we come to the why do we need a bigger outlay of technology. I also break it into 3 different levels, and I'm going to dwell on this in a little bit more deeply in a few slides. The ways of looking at technology, on the one hand, it enables us to be more effective with the things that we're doing right now. It enhances classroom activities as we currently see them. But we're also seeing in education that technology has a transformative effect, where sometimes students are being assigned watch YouTube videos when you go home, do these online activities when you go home, so that you know content when you come back to class the next day. A flipped classroom environment is what they're referring to there. And we also then, as mentioned before, need to find more ways to become more effective, where there be lower cost resources to students, quicker access to resources for students, things of that ilk. Keep forgetting the animation on this, sorry. So, when we talk about enhancement, we're talking about things in the classroom like differentiating according to student needs, or maybe the teacher having access to materials to provide remediation, enrichment, or something additionally engaging for a student. Transformation would be new teaching practices, and also offering different avenues or different angles of media and text. And then the consistency and savings for the district and family are key drivers in our mobile learning initiative. I think it's important when going down the path of a large project such as the Mobile Learning Initiative to make sure we anchor things in our key defining statements that we have within the strategic plan of the district that we've now been using in several different areas of work we've been doing. So in green, I've highlighted key areas that I think are directly related so I can prove the alignment of the Mobile Learning Initiative to these key documents. So the vision statement highlights, I go to the bottom first, leading edge resources, equitable education, success in a global society, knowing that technology crosscuts through all those to help our students be more effective. Meeting the needs of all students, particularly for future success in life. There is no doubt to all of us that technology is going to be a huge part of our students' futures, if not already. I'm not going to make you read all the belief statements. I do need to dwell on holistic belief, highest quality education to students, preparing them, again, for success in life. But as we go through the belief statements, we see that the vast majority of them are somehow related to the Mobile Learning Initiative, whether it be top-notch curriculum and instruction, using high-quality, innovative instructional practices, having communication tools, financial responsibility, finally, citizenship. And in that regard, we're referring to citizenship on the net. What we're looking to do over time with technology is utilize what's called the SAMR model. The SAMR model is a taxonomy starting with the lower level of change in technology at the bottom with substitution, moving up to deeper levels of change. So we go substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. At the bottom is the enhancement that I already referred to. I had one of the teachers at the high school gave me a great way of referring to this. So substitution is like going to Starbucks, and instead of your normal drip coffee at home, you get a coffee at Starbucks. A little bit better flavor, right? But it still has the same functional purpose of waking you up in the morning. The next step is augmentation, which would be basically the same tool, but it's a substitute with some functional improvement. So we'll say that could be a latte. Going up to modifications, where you start to see significant change in the use of, in our case, the use of technology. Using the coffee analogy, it's caramel macchiato, where it's substantial difference in flavors, difference in visual appeal, difference in, I would say, enjoyment. And then you get up to redefinition, using Starbucks as your coffee shop, that would be the pumpkin spice latte, where it's a totally different beverage and you can only get it at Starbucks. So that's something that's previously inconceivable at other coffee shops. But that at the top is where we're looking under transformation, of where we're really changing the way we teach, where kids are learning things at home, coming to school for practice, for checking with teachers, or for the actual assessments themselves. And we want to move, and with time, with professional development, move our students and staff up through the SAMR model. And we also don't want technology just to be a one-off. We want to make it a regular part of how we conduct business. It's not a special day when you get to use computers. It's the way students learn. Before I dive into what we're kicking around at the moment for Mobile Learning Initiative, I wanted to give you a clarification, not clarification, but update on where we're at with technology in the building. We have quite a few computers at the elementary schools. We have a 3-to-1 ratio, which is substantial for elementary grades. We have 89 interactive whiteboards, 111 iPads, 64 iPods, and 4 clicker sets. And we have a 70% Wi-Fi deployment. David's team will have that completed by the end of summer. If I say it, it's true, right? Okay, and at the middle school, we have 992 student computers, but and a 1.8-to-1 student-computer ratio. You'll see the other devices we have a much smaller rollout of, and we've got a little bit more deployment of our Wi-Fi at the middle school level. Currently, I didn't say this at the high school, we're on our second year of pilot programs at the high school. This year, we did a much larger pilot program at the middle school, where we have 2 class sets of the Chromebook devices at each middle school, and by quarter we rotate through the different teachers who applied to be part of the pilot. Already several of the teachers in the blue, which would be quarter 2, have told me that either they or their students will do physical harm to me when we take away the Chromebooks at the end of this quarter. It's really been an extremely positive experience. It's helped, I think, warm things up for more to come, that there's a lot of sharing that's been taking place, a lot of great discovery, a lot of fun. At the high school, our ratio isn't quite as rich as what we have at the middle school. We only have 902 computers, which is a 2.9-to-1 student-computer ratio, with a nice mix of attending equipment. And we've got a ways to go with our Wi-Fi deployment. What we eventually see, and this is a work in progress, we'd like to see at the high school level get to the point where students are owning their own Chromebooks, that we're able to start to reduce the expenditures on the textbook side, where families come in to purchase textbooks, and they're able to instead get digital content and use Chromebooks instead. That's not going to be easy. It's going to take a little bit of time as teachers shift from more traditional textbook use and make the move to finding something of equal or better value in the digital environment. Teachers have to move into being almost like editors of textbooks, and that takes time. And we have some great materials that we use already. We need to find things that are equally strong, and that's going to take a while. We do have some people that are interested already in making that move, but it's something we have to do more planning with before we're ready to make that move. I think it's important that we make it as close to a swap as possible. At the middle level is where I think we have the strongest progress, and what we're speculating to do there is to have district-provided classroom sets of Chromebooks. So students aren't taking the devices home like they would at York High School, where they would own or lease the Chromebooks, but they'd be at school and readily available for the students. Elementary has changed a little bit recently. Originally, our plan was to have a rollout of smartboards, as we have been doing for K-1-2, but have smartboards K through 3, and then we would start to move classroom laptops into the K-3 classes. And then we were going to use for grades 4 and 5 classroom iPads and the traditional classroom laptops that are pretty similar to what you have. What we've been finding, though, real recently, as we've talked this over to individual 5th grade teachers, is that they're real excited to get students working with Chromebooks as soon as possible, to get the students ready for middle school, and that they see in their curriculum that they're doing more and more writing, so they're less excited about an iPad where it's a little harder to be productive, to create papers with, and are interested in shifting to Chromebooks. The teachers, however, and this is part of our decision-making from last year, is that teachers would stick with traditional laptops. Chromebooks, the only real difference in Chromebook is you're spending your life on a Chrome browser using Google Apps. Well, anyone with a regular laptop can use Google Apps on a traditional laptop. So since teachers still have the need to use some of the higher-end Office products, maybe Word to put out a better looking document than you can do in Google, or maybe Excel or some of the other applications that we use, we would leave teachers with traditional laptops. I'm going to pass out one of the Chromebooks. Quite honestly, if I could avoid using a regular laptop, I would take this. This is lighter than a high school textbook. Can I open it? You can open it, but I didn't log in, so you're going to see a gray screen. Normally it'd be very full of work being done. So we hope to have students teachers on the traditional Windows platform. We've already had a few that would like to shift over. So why Chromebooks? Why are we talking these Chromebooks? The first is it enables students, and this is in comparison to iPads, we think for 5th grade, and we need to do some study on this, for 5th grade, middle school, and high school, it enables the students to do the type of work that they're typically called upon to do, which would be the creation of papers, creating documents, and creating mixed media. Chromebook allows us a full breadth of features. Much like iPads, there are extensions or apps you can download into your Chrome browser. So earlier this week we had a professional development take place here in which students were our teachers, which our teachers were being taught how to use a very advanced graphing calculator on the Chromebook, and then different ways that they could use that media to turn it into a teaching tool for students. So there's apps like that that can be downloaded onto the Chrome browser, and the number of those apps is growing very, very quickly because there's a lot of inertia behind schools and really all people moving to Chromebook. We also believe that they're assessment ready. It would be more effective to take a PARCC test or an ACT on a device where students can where they'll have to be typing. This gives them more screen space, more hand space for typing on a paper than an iPad would. We think that's kind of constraining for students. We also think it meets the teacher's needs. It gives them versatility in that they can browse on it, they can do productive work on it in terms of writing papers, and then they can use some of those apps. One of the biggest things we've seen so far in our pilot at the middle school is students collaborating on the platform, so that you'll see students who are writing on their papers and then using that Google Doc where others can add commentary to a student's paper in real time. In fact, we had a teacher at one point logged in from, I think he was at the district office doing a workshop over here. He was able to check some of the work of his students who were back in the building with this. At one point he told a student to get back to work, that sort of thing. So real life, real-time collaboration on major projects. There's not a huge infrastructure that's required. Since Chromebooks operate in the cloud, it has less requirement for local memory devices, and for the most part doesn't require a build out on some of the systems like what we use at the high school. One of the things that I think is a really big deal is a Chromebook has instant on. So when you open that lid, turn it on, it is on. And I've been in classroom observations where teachers had students work on traditional laptops and they take a long time to boot up. Even a fairly new laptop with some good horsepower still takes a lot of downtime as those computers are turning on. So we have some teachers have to leave their computers on all day long so that they don't lose that 5 minutes of boot up time. Some, it's a classroom management issue where you got to really plan around, okay, in a half an hour I'm going to use these machines. I got to make sure kids turn them on early, which just seems awfully burdensome. These devices at this point have 5 to 7 hours of battery life, which means you can pretty much get a full day out of them. And we think that's advantageous too, because the other devices, we're lucky if we get 4 hours. We think this meets our district's needs as well. There's a great cost advantage to Chromebooks. Our approach to purchasing these is we need to do a middle school laptop refresh. Is it this year, David, or next? This coming summer. And the cost advantage of Chromebooks is you can get about 2.5 Chromebooks for every traditional laptop. We think we can get coverage, therefore, where more students can get their hands on Chromebooks this way. As mentioned before, there's a lot of versatility. It's very easy to manage these since they're all cloud-based and they use the Google environment. David can essentially log in to manage these devices. So the refreshing of software, the imaging of computers with new software can be done centrally and remotely, saving a lot of time. We pay a small fee with Google. I think it's $30. $30 for the lifetime of the device, and it takes a lot of hands-on tech time out of the equation. It's also a platform that enables us to do a lot of sharing. It's a low-cost platform that we think is favorable as well. As we made the decision to go to Chromebook, it's important to include part of the conversation that I don't have a slide on. Is you go through a series of decisions, and part of the reason why we want to bring this to the board is that you go through the series of decisions and it essentially narrows where you're going to end up. So we call it EPD, and now it's EPDA. So our first question is environment. What sort of environment do we want our students to be working in? Do we want them to be in a cloud-based environment, which I think most software, most technology experts will tell you that more and more is going into the cloud on a regular basis? Or do we want to be on terrestrial servers, where students are using hard stock memory to carry their papers around back and forth to school? For example, I've got a 7th grade boy at home who started trying to bring his paper back and forth from school on his thumb drive and somehow lost it from leaving the house to getting to school. Now he's on Google and it's always there. It's always accessible. We had another great story of a student on Thanksgiving. At Thanksgiving, he was at his grandmother's house. There was some downtime. He logged in and started working on his paper from his grandmother's house out of town. So that always availableness of the cloud is a great asset, I think, for our students and staff. The next question is platform. And when we talk about Chromebooks, we're really talking about the Chrome platform. So an equivalent platform would be iTunes or the iOS. Do we want to be completely tied into Mac, or do we want to be on a platform that anyone can be a part of, regardless of what kind of device you have? As long as you have a browser, you can be in the Chrome environment. The next decision is device. And while we call it Chromebook, Chromebook has essentially the same meaning as Kleenex. There, at this point, are 3 or 4 producers of Chromebooks. We know that there are more coming. So I think that's a Samsung, there's an Acer, there's an Asus, and there's another one, Lenovo. So there's more and more opportunities for us in terms of the actual devices that we purchase. And the last thing that we consider, and this is where it's important to keep it last, are the apps, because we can all get caught up in the apps. I know that iPad has tremendous apps, but if we start with apps, we limit ourselves in terms of our decision-making criteria. We have, I think, 6 big areas of planning needs that David and I and our departments are working on. One is legalities and logistics. How do we get the machines into students' hands? We do want to have some control over the devices at the high school level. It's easier to control them at the middle school level because in most cases the devices will stay at school. But when students have ownership or leasing rights, we need to work through the legalities and the distribution of the devices. We know that there is a tremendous need for professional development. We've got early adopters, fast followers, but we have reluctant people or those who haven't had enough training to even feel slightly comfortable about making a move to Chrome. So we've got a long ways to go in professional development. I'm sure it's going to be solved by the end of the summer, but we do need to make sure that we have connectivity. If we're going to rely on these devices, teachers have to know that they can have their students log in and get into the network. Because they're because they're browser-based, if we don't have a network, the device is borderline non-functioning. How we provide these across to the district and distribute them and share them across, particularly at the middle level, is essential. Making sure that they are not an add-on to our curriculum, but making sure they're legitimately a part of our curriculum. Having true curriculum integration is essential. And then really the management of making sure the machines work, making sure that we have repairs and whatnot are essential as well.
Like classroom management too, the whole environment, the students in it.
So, thanks. Finally, kind of recognizing in the big picture of what's going on, particularly in the curriculum and instruction department, while this is one of our broader improvement initiatives in the department, there's obviously a lot more going on. So deferring enough time in different places and resetting priorities so that we can get this done effectively, but we still have curriculum cycles to go through. We have work to do in terms of various teams that we have going on. We have assessments to write and whatnot. We've been working this year very hard to make sure that we have just-in-time technology support for teachers, so they don't just have to go to a professional development class at night because we know that people's schedules are super busy. So we've got many resources that are online that we link to on our website. One of the beautiful things about going to Google is they've really lead the way in terms of providing instructional support either through video or through online tutorials. And that's our mobile learning initiative. So we're still seeking feedback. Like I said, we're going to take some Chromebooks to the elementary level to give some of the elementary teachers who I think are our early adopters a chance to see what that's like. We have some questions when we move from middle school to elementary, we have some pretty tough questions to ask ourselves. This year we gave middle school students Gmail accounts so that they could actually log into Chrome. And in all honesty, I was very worried that we were going to get phone calls about, you gave my child a Gmail address, what were you thinking? And we got control on it, so students cannot interact through mail to outside of the district. But it's one thing to do that at the middle level and entirely another when we seep into 5th grade. However, I was told that there are 3rd graders in our districts who email their teachers when they have questions about homework. So I'm not sure that is going to be a concern for long. So I'm open to your questions, and I'm sure David will help too.
Emily?
So with the middle school program that you said has been the pilot that's been successful so far, what kind of support did you provide? I mean, you showed the website, but what kind of support, administrators, people in Dave's department, did the teachers have? What kind of training did they have? Were they able just to hit the ground running, or what did you do with the teachers that made it so successful?
Well, we didn't give them much support. We only have one technology support person in the district who handles all sites. In some cases, Kathy Baker was able to do some real intensive work, but in most cases, and I don't want this to be the model going forward, I don't think it's going to be effective. It was effective with early adopters, but many cases they taught themselves. We gave them initial rollout. We had some training earlier in the year on the Google environment, very early in the year, and these came at the beginning of 2nd quarter, so there was a large gap in time. But by and large, in many cases, they taught themselves or taught each other. So one of the things we did last week when we had our middle school meeting is gave them an opportunity to share with each other, and we got quite a bit of benefit out of that. We've also offered after-school evening classes, and we've had certain people in the district get extensive Google training where you can get Google certified. And I think at the end of January, we have 20 educators we're sending out to be fully Google certified, which will help. It increases the expert capacity within the buildings, but that is a limiting factor for us, is how can we get more support for people.
And then you mentioned that the Google Docs that people were using maybe weren't as good as some of the Microsoft Office, like making a spreadsheet. But isn't it really just that people are a lot more comfortable with Microsoft Office because I feel like in my experience, I can make spreadsheets, what would be a PowerPoint presentation, a presentation, just general documents. You can do all that on Chrome. I just think most people aren't as familiar with it, right? Are more comfortable in Microsoft Office.
Familiarity is a very big thing. I think that you can get more aesthetic features through, let's say, Word than you can in Google Doc. I haven't come across anything in my own personal experience with my own children where anything they created in Google Doc wasn't satisfactory or wouldn't have been satisfactory to me as a classroom teacher. The other thing for us all to remember is Google is updating and adding features to their platform on a daily basis. So what we see a year from now will be substantially different than what we have now.
And I think you said, but I just want to clarify. So we are about to make an investment or we need to make an investment in new laptops at the middle school level. So this is a good time to think about instead doing Chromebooks, which you can get 2.5 for the cost of one laptop. Is that right?
Precisely. We're moving into a time where we need to refresh a large number of computers, 700, that was close, 500 and some computers at the middle school level. For that cost differential, we can have a ton more access. And when I observe classes, I'm seeing teachers really struggle to get access to computers on a regular basis. You'll see cases where students are teaming up where a teacher has access to 15 computers. So they'll jointly write on a paper. It's 2 students to 1. It's not as effective as if they each had their own machine.
Okay. I might have more questions later.
Margaret?
First off, thank you. That was a great presentation. What I liked most was the idea, the planning piece, and that already you've gotten feedback from the elementary school teachers that said, hey, don't put us on an iPad, we want the Chromebook too. So my question goes along to that whole idea of gaining feedback, and I know this is work in progress, but what's the plan on how to make sure the staff is, giving their input and providing ideas and updates, and how will that be integrated into the plan?
Well, I suspect we'll never get enough feedback on this topic, and giving people a chance to vent their feelings as we move through the early adopters and the fast followers will be essential. In the pilots that we've run both last year and are currently running this year, there's a survey that goes with it, so we have hard data. We've also had David, me, and Kathy have been around, in my department actually, have been around to different teachers to see the work in progress. We've talked to a couple of the critical people. We have the CTC committee, which is a place we can fill in where our survey doesn't give us enough information. The CTC is a source of feedback. At York, they have the instructional technology committee, which gives us feedback as well. The elementary is an area we need to do more focus on. We've been primarily focused on middle school because we've got that opportunity with the replacement going on. But already, like you referred to, David had a meeting. I think it was you upstairs had a meeting. We had a meeting going on upstairs one night. I was down here with another team of teachers, all getting excited at the elementary level about Chromebooks. So we need now to prepare ourselves as we get a little further down the road to start soliciting feedback in the same way we did at the middle school and the high school.
Shannon?
Yeah, I wanted to go along with what Margaret was talking about with feedback. At the elementary, has there been feedback on the classrooms that have the smart boards, the younger grades? When I look at the list of what we want K through 3 to do, we want them to be able to keyboard, collaboration, some of the skills like that. But if you just had the smart board, for instance, for K through 1, you're not going to be able to do that for those kids. So it's twofold. One is we need to get feedback from the teachers that have been using smart boards and see if that's working for them, because I know smart boards is a one person at a time type of device. So if you want a lot of kids to have access, then a smart board is one at a time. So I just want to make sure we're getting feedback from that before we you know, the potential technology deployment for the younger grades is smart boards and not the Chromebooks. So maybe we want to get the Chromebooks for all of the grades, so there'd be more access, and it's not just a one at a time type of thing. So I just want to make sure we hit those younger grades too, of what they've already been doing.
I agree. I think we've got different levels of use. We've had different participation levels at the smartboard trainings that we've had. Maybe suspending our progression of going from K1 to, instead of going all the way through grade 3, we might be able to not renegotiate, but kind of reorient some of our funds as we learn more about this device. I agree completely. We don't have, the grade 3 smartboards that we have, for the most part, are contributions from our donations. So we were looking to fill in the pieces from a budget standpoint. I'm speaking for David's budget, but we were going to, over time, build up smartboards from K1, 2, and then into 3 to fill in any classrooms that are mixed, so that when our teachers come together to do instructional sharing or curricular sharing, they're all equipped with the same basic devices. I've seen some really great work on smartboards, but I also hear people who don't find it to be an integral part of their day-to-day. I think before we go any further, we need to kind of peel that back a bit and say, maybe there is another approach. And as technology grows, there's other devices now that have very similar capabilities, depending on how you use your smartboard. I see some teachers use the smartboard to really organize their whole class. Their whole chunks of instruction are all based around that smartboard, and it's fantastic. Others use it more as a mixed media device, and there are other options that would be substantially cheaper and I think easier to use. So, but those new devices have just come on the market in the past maybe 6-8 months. So it's a field where whatever we do is going to be our opportunities are going to be very different in really months, if not if years, if not months.
There's less flexibility with smart boards. Yeah, right, okay. Can I? Okay, then my next part was, how do you, we have a curriculum, how do you link the curriculum to the Chromebook? It's the content. I mean, the presentation's it's great. It's good about the Chromebook. Seems like it's you know, there's a lot of positives to it, but then how do you integrate it with what the kids are supposed to learn?
Well, I think the clearest thing we're seeing right now are people that are using it to create papers and presentations, and then using it as collaboration, so that teachers are teaching students how to edit each other's papers, what to look for a quality paper, and if I can see examples of a high quality paper in somebody else's paper, then ideally it comes back into my own paper. And there's great examples of our students where they've had group sharing on each other's papers. We've seen the same thing in some spreadsheet work that's being done as well, and in the creation, as I've said, of presentations. But we hope, and we're seeing a lot of change in the market when it comes to for sale or commercial curriculum and content that's out there. Things are changing very rapidly, where publishers are making fast moves into digital content. The other opportunity then is to look for things that are open source. So newspaper articles that our students can get their hands on, so that they can see original materials, so they have a variety of materials, so that they have some choices that may be of more interest to them. So lessons where students might be studying a particular topic, instead of just being confined to what is in a textbook or what is in the library, they have the whole internet. They learn research techniques, things to be aware of, particularly at the high school. We've got some lessons going on with how to be alert to some of the lack of value on the content in the web.
Karen?
Thank you very much. This was wonderful communication of, I'm going to call it a slice, right, of technology, application, and education. So that's kind of lays out kind of the series of questions that I'm going to ask, okay? But this is wonderful for us to see this and see technology in the classroom and what you're envisioning for the district and how you're collaborating with the classroom as well as administration across curriculum instruction to technology, et cetera, to metrics and DPIs. The CTC makeup or the composition of the people on CTC, I think it would be important for everybody to know, right? That, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's all the buildings, classroom representation, principals, administration, and once again, slicing, like, let's say, all of our organizations, right? Okay, so that, I think that's important for people to get a feel for, the collaboration there. If you have something to clarify, go ahead. Okay.
I was just going to add that the roles are varied too. So there's some teachers, there's some aides, there's a variety of, within the teacher roles too, different roles within teaching, so librarians, classroom teachers, so that we tried to really have as broad a cross-section as we could, just to elaborate a little further on that.
And that's good, that's the point. And it's a two-way. I mean, you know, they're bringing input, you know, you as a team or a committee are working on it, but they're also bringing the information from the committee meetings back out to their schools so that, you know, we're trying to communicate, right, through that as well as move it forward. Okay. One small question is around, I know in the past we've said that we have basically, the pipes aren't big enough, to make it simple, right? The backbone. You have to have the infrastructure. So are we moving toward helping in that area? Because as we move toward the technology, you'll have more users, there'll be more need, et cetera, for capacity.
Yeah, we're actually moving along that technology infrastructure roadmap that I presented last spring. We're moving along that at the planned rate, more or less. It's quite a bit of work, so it's maybe a little bit slower than we'd like, but we're more or less progressing along that path in the same timeline. The slides that showed the percentage of wireless coverage, that's a little misleading, I think. There's actually 100% coverage. I mean, you can get a wireless signal everywhere, but what it really represents is the capacity of the wireless network. It really, for example, if you wanted to have a full classroom set of devices in every classroom in a building, our infrastructure currently would not be able to handle that. You would gas out at a certain percentage. That's what I was trying to reflect in that number. So the plan, though, that again, we'll probably revisit that in an upcoming board meeting. I'll probably go through my state of technology again. The plan would be to finish that off and have full coverage with full capacity for full classroom sets. That's the plan. And then when it comes to the backbone of the network, basically that's been built out as well. We just switched over around Thanksgiving to the gigabit wide area network between buildings. And then the next phase of the wireless equipment upgrade would involve all the local area network switches within the closets. So by the time the summer is over, the plan would be to have fully upgraded. The entire plan that I discussed last spring would be complete or very near complete. It would be in progress, if not complete, by the end of the summer. So we would have our infrastructure in place.
Okay. So that really leads to the next question that I have is, it's kind of like a rollout plan. So, you know, we're going to hit the middle schools, do the pilot, maybe add some more schools, students, teachers, et cetera, right? And just kind of, does everyone understand kind of when it's going to hit them so that they're prepared? You know, because we have to look at that whole change management piece of it, that human factor.
That is work. In some cases, we've talked about what we hope to do, but as we're learning and talking to people, that's changing. I think that we thought we were making more progress at some grade levels than we were, and so we have to retool that not quite a bit in places. So that is the work that's ahead of us, and the 6 critical success factors that I had, our ability to address those and how rapidly will really dictate how fast we're able to make this happen. And those are some pretty substantial hurdles still.
Right. Yeah, and it's just, you know, making sure that we communicate with people, kind of get ready for this, and if we have to modify it, you just communicate that we're, you know, moving earlier, we're lagging. It's just preparing people to be able to embrace it and plan. Okay. So this kind of gives us, once again, a slice. It's the technology to the classroom slice of the whole network infrastructure. So it's not really a question, just kind of, I mean, if you can answer it to some degree, that's okay. But we have a lot of technology needs, right? I mean, we've got HR, we've got billing, we've got, all of these, the people, the processes, and the systems. And this is just one slice of that entire technology platform that we have district-wide, right? And that's how you're looking at it
Yeah,
together?
we have a very active system from all of our different management tools that we have in place. And I think that is something that's important to juggle, are all the different systems we're expecting our employees, whether they be classroom teachers or administrators. There's a lot of systems out there that people have to learn and become comfortable with. And in some cases, they're used on a regular basis. Sometimes they're used once in a while, sometimes once, maybe twice a year. And so helping people and finding easy tools, creating tools so people can find support for those things that they don't use on a regular basis is essential, because there really are a lot of systems that we have in place.
And so that leads to why I'm, kind of saying this is there's linkages sometimes. And if you have the platform, then you can work with other systems, the processes that you have in place, and the people to, make it more seamless or less user intensive, if you will. It could be automated.
That is certainly something that can be envisioned. The Google platform is highly interconnected, where you're using a common login for many features. There's some deep discussions that go beyond classroom, that David and I, we whisper in the hallway. We're not ready to go there yet, but where we can start to tie systems together. However, there's some that are unrelated. Our PD Express, in which we manage teachers' professional credits, is a separate system, requires a separate logon, and our teachers maybe use that 3 or 4 times a year, so it takes a refresher when they come back to it to sign up for winter conferences. So it can be kind of burdensome. So we're looking for different ways to make that easier. Whether, we don't really have enough the human resources to make videos, to make it as easy as Google. That's one of the beautiful things about Google, are the training videos already exist.
Training and professional development? Yeah.
Right, so we just need to continue working on our other systems that we have people use.
Okay, thank you.
John?
This was great. I really appreciate it. I especially like hearing how you're bringing in a lot of different voices, a lot of different opinions in this, broadening it out, empowering the teachers, letting them have a voice in their own work environment and what it'll look like, and respecting them as professionals to find the best route to the kids. Very impressed. Anytime we move from a exploratory phase to a focus and an implementation phase, and it seems like that's where you are suggesting we go, and I'm not sure whether there's board action necessary for it, but I certainly personally feel supportive of the focus that you've taken on, as provide that provision to keep taking input and feedback is there. What I do see is a bit of duplication or parallel going on with some of the other things we have. Smart boards, that's already been talked about here. The iPads, I'm wondering if that's perhaps a duplication that might be the remnant of prior initiatives. I noticed that at no level do we have more than 10% of the iPad or iPod, and yet I think those are those differing systems that require different training, different support, and I'm just wondering if you might speak to this idea of, now that we are at this implementation stage where focus will be very important, is it a way to focus ourselves into that? I noticed that we have a donation on our consent agenda from Edison Schools for iPads, and I just wonder if you could talk about that.
The user experience of the two devices is very different, and there's a large number of proponents who like iPads because they have apps that are very tactile, are very engaging, are able to give, in some cases, student intervention or remediation for things they're struggling on. So I still believe that there is a real value for tablets, but for more specific use rather than general use, which is what I think the Chromebook is for. There's some really great things going on in this district where the iPad is essential. David was a part of, and David and I have both seen a Google presentation on the opportunity of Google's version of tablets, particularly the Galaxy 7? Nexus 7, which would then keep us in the same platform and then would be able to be one login system. But we're not seeing the build out of apps, particularly for the educational market there, that exists right now and has existed for iPad. There's a lot of inertia still, there's a lot of inertia for iPads in the educational environment. We just think that the long term, that's going to be a problem because students, to type a paper on an iPad is a trial. I mean, it's hard. And we think that as our kids do more and more writing, those devices are going to be problematic. So yeah, we do have some redundancies. What I really see is we have some different functions for the two sets of devices. So I don't feel so bad that we have, in fact, I still think there's a need for iPads at the elementary level because we can do some specialized things with those that we can't the Chromebook, which I guess is a quicker answer than one I gave you.
Well, the specific question is some of the supportive materials in that donation indicated 4 days of training, 4 4-hour days of training for the iPad. And when I hear you say that professional development for the Chromebook is a limiting factor that's going to limit your ability to, to get impact. And I'm looking at some of the factors that you wrote in your piece there, the simplification of professional development, efficiencies, cost containment. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can work a little bit more on a focus. If they do indeed, as you say, serve different functions, and there, it may be a level basis for differentiating those functions. I can understand that, but I'm just wondering, what your approach on this would be in terms of focusing some of the community involvement.
I think the Edison iPad examples is a perfect way we'd like to go in the future. That money is set aside so that we're essentially outsourcing professional development, so that we're not further burdening the one person we have doing PD on tech for the whole district, but we're getting other providers for that, so that we're solving that very need that you talk about, that you mentioned, of needing to have PD, but just being so tight on really we're at a human resource problem. And so by going outside, and there's plenty of quality iPad, actually there's plenty of quality technology consultants out there, that there are people that are accessible. So building that into the Edison plan, I think really helps us as a district to continue to grow out where we want to grow with highly attractive tools for kids, but also we have the back end to support the teachers' use of them.
I agree. I mean, it is a comprehensive gift in the way that it deals with support and it deals with training and all that. My question is it a parallel thing with what you're trying to do with Chrome, or do you think it is a good addition to what you're trying to do with Chrome?
I don't think it is going to add, I don't think it's going to supplement the Chrome initiative. The uses of the two devices are very different. So I wouldn't say it's redundant. They don't support each other necessarily either. The use of the two devices, or at least the way I envision that Edison wants to use it, are very different. So yeah, it is another one of those things where you can only put so much into the pot, and we're getting pretty full. We don't envision using Chromebooks at the elementary level at this point beyond 5th grade. But down the road, that's going to, in all likelihood, change. And I think your point is well taken, is that we're kind of, by having two sets of devices, we're adding complexity, and that means more opportunities for breakdown.
The other thing is, I have to add, this is a developing process. So what you're seeing tonight is a slice in time of where we are right now. The whole question about 5th grade Chromebooks is still to be defined. I mean, we need to talk to teachers, get their input, see if that's a go. Same thing with iPads. I think like the Edison project will allow us to look at what is the capability of iPads and where may they fit in the whole picture with Chromebooks and with the middle school pilots and all of that. So some of those questions I don't think we can answer yet until we get the iPads into the hands of teachers who have the training, who say, oh, I think we can use them this way, where the Chromebooks we can use that way. So I think the answer is the question. We're not totally sure yet. And I know, there's an impatience to have all the answers to this, but technology moves so quickly, and we're trying to, get input from teachers and take our time to make sure that they're comfortable with the technology, and we're just not putting devices in their hands and saying, well, good luck, here it is. We hope we'll have a good time. I mean, that's not an effective deployment of anybody's resources. So I think the important thing is looking at what they're doing and how they might be applied at the various levels and various.
If I can punctuate Mr. Pruneau's point, the whole idea of fifth grade Chromebooks is really just feedback we've gotten from a few people. So that's not a part of this initiative at this time. This is just where the feedback on the vision is opening our minds to something that really 2 weeks ago we hadn't been considering. So before the fifth grade teachers get all this anxiety before the break. It's not John's fault. I opened the door. It really is just where we were headed in one direction because of the feedback we've been given. We're reconsidering things a little bit.
Everybody but Mr. Bloom has asked questions. Do you have questions? And then I'll start on round two.
I have a few. I guess my experience with technology and in listening to you, I think a lot of what I hear in the undertone side of it is a lot of it's driven by platform and environment. Devices are somewhat irrelevant. Devices will change, devices will improve, devices will be disposable at some point potentially. But it seems like we are making a commitment to be on the Google education platform. And that's the major decision. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about devices right now and budgeting around devices, but it's about capabilities, it's about professional development, training teachers. I would love to have a discussion at a future meeting about that environment, how we chose it, how it stacks up against the other alternatives that we have, what other districts are using it, how are they using it. I think it would be really neat to have some of the teachers that were using these things come talk to us about what they're doing with some of this technology. I think that's really neat. Some case studies on some other districts, but really around that environment. It's what are the collaboration tools and platforms? What's the content creation capabilities that has? What did we look at? What are some other ways? Getting people excited too by saying, okay, we're doing it like this, but you know what? There's some districts that do this or this or this with it, and we, see that potential. I think that starts to this is a significant investment that the public needs to make. And I just think having a little more information on deciding on that platform, because that's the toughest thing, because we can always change devices as we go down the road, but it's that if you don't have a robust platform, you're just, from the collaboration and everything else, we're just throwing money away by just dropping devices in. So I would love to have that discussion at some point in time.
May I interject one thing there that, in fact, as I'll point out, we are going to do this over the course of a couple of meetings, because this is too big of a topic, too big of a decision to really just try to totally encompass within this meeting. So we are going to devote more than time at more than one meeting to this. I just want to clarify that.
So I mean, that was one piece. I'd just like to have that discussion. I recognize that you guys have done a lot of work. This is really a great way to kick it off. This is the platform's the other piece. The second piece, and I don't know how this interacts with curriculum, because technology cuts across everything we do within HR and finance and everything else. And you were talking about how some of the different pieces of applications exist within our environment. We're talking about classroom. And I think from a professional development, there's a lot, park and all the other things that you had highlighted there. How can, stepping up from just the classroom to a district-wide, and I don't know where that sits. I guess, from a curriculum and instruction standpoint, you have a slice of it. But in general, how do we have that discussion about our technology environment across and how they play with each other? So Google Education within the classroom is interesting. What about within the staff area? What about within finance and some of the other things? I think that's a long-term discussion we need to have. And what's that? We're not ready for Oh, no, I just want to, we're starting a journey here to have this discussion, and we can only do so much at a clip here. But I just think we have to make sure that we don't lose, you got this piece in the classroom, and you've got the staff piece, and you've got something that kind of unites it. That's where we're going, and we'll try to, develop thoughts around that, but it's going to be a series of conversations.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just want to make sure the board understands. All we're giving you tonight, Charles, and that is the educational classroom side of this. There is the whole other district environment that we probably need to talk about in the future that Dave is also working on, HR and all of that. But tonight was just to focus on a possible pathway when it comes to technology in the classroom.
And my last point is just, we talked about some of these pilots, we talked about successful. I would love to have a conversation around defining what that is. What have other districts experienced? How have they defined success? How are we going to define success? Again, it's a lot of money that we're going to be spending here. What kind of dials are we kind of looking at? And some of them are qualitative necessarily, but having a definition of success, so we're not all look at each other and go, yeah, was that successful? Yeah, I think so. So I would just ask for that too as we move forward. But thank you.
Emily, do you have something? Thank you.
So and you don't have to lay out your entire 5-year plan now, but just talking a lot about the middle school, would we also at the same time start a pilot program, something in 9th grade, so that when these kids, someone who's a 6th grader isn't using this technology to enhance their learning, and then they get to 9th grade and there's nothing there for them? I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this. Do you mind just giving me a little bit of what's on your mind?
Well, this is an area that we've had to start retooling a little bit because I think we got out, there was some exuberance that kind of got a hold as we started talking about where we were headed with technology. So ideally what we'd start doing is looking at the high school level for teachers who felt with professional development that they were ready to start making the transition. Ideally that would happen at a freshman level classes. But what's happening is the high school is starting a dialogue with teachers who feel they might be more readily able to make a conversion to digital content to support their teaching. That's going to take some time. It's going to take some training. And then it's going to take time really assembling the materials together. So what we'd like to do is find ways that students and their families could buy a machine in their freshman year and hold it throughout high school. So we'd amortize the cost of a $300 device across 4 years. We have some experiments going on right now on whether the 2 of the applications that you can get on Chromebook are sufficient alternatives to a TI-84 calculator, which we've talked about before, which would then reduce the pressure on families by almost 50%. But we still have some work to do there. We don't have, the early indications aren't real clear cut, and we have some more work, like I said, more work to do there yet. But ideally we would start developing content in advance of these classes as they're coming over to the high school. That's going to be hard. We have a lot of materials at the high school. Finding a way to coordinate it well, we need to do some more homework on. But that's a goal.
And then kind of like what Chris said about other districts and looking at them. I mean, we're not the first ones to talk about Chromebooks. Are we in the middle? I mean, are there other districts that you don't have to reinvent the wheel? You've seen what other districts have done, and
I think one of the advantages of being where we are geographically is that there's a lot of role models around us who've gone down this path and have some really terrific programs that they've put in place very near to us, and they in turn offer training, they offer school visits. Their staff are now becoming trainers so that they can support other schools in the area. So we've got a lot of our colleagues that are already on this path. I don't know where to put us on a trajectory. There are obviously districts that are far, far behind us on technology. I would say probably most districts in the state of Illinois are well behind us in technology. How do we stack up with the districts we normally compare ourselves to? We're still examining that. What happens in changes like this is you have certain districts become high flyers, and we have a number of high flyers that aren't too far from us.
Margaret?
Just one thought, quick question. to ask you to make a consideration. As we were talking about feedback, and as you were elaborating on who made up the CTC and the different groups, the one thought that came to mind, is there a way to include students in this process, since they are obviously the ones that are using it, and they are light years ahead of us most times?
Yes, there is. We can certainly do that. We also have used in our CTC conversations student data from the high school. All we have at this point from the middle school is a video. The problem is we didn't have permission. We videotape students giving us some anecdotal feedback on their experiences, but we haven't done it in a broad-based, systematic way. We selected kids from a couple classrooms and got their feedback. I definitely think that's something we need to go forward. We need to have going forward. Part of the reason why we are advocating the move to Chromebook is feedback we got from the high school.
If I can add my 2 cents, I think most of what I'm thinking has already been discussed, but if I can just emphasize 2 things. You know, first of all, it's a big decision. I think when the district chose to go to the PC platform, whenever that was made, there were probably only 2 choices available at the time. Now there are far more choices available, and it's a big decision. As Chris says, you know, you're adopting the Google education platform, and the question is, if something better comes along, how easy is it to move from that as technology progresses? And I just want to emphasize that if we can hear in our next discussion about this what some of these other districts that you're working with and observed are doing, that would be very interesting. And if there's any way to hear from the teachers, particularly those teachers that are threatening bodily harm, should those Chromebooks be removed, I'd love to hear from them. What are they doing with them in their classroom? Why do they consider it a success, both in qualitative and quantitative terms? If you can find a teacher generous enough to donate their time to come talk to us about that, I'd love to hear that.
There's a couple for whom the passion is so strong, I will have no problem bringing people here to talk on behalf of the Chromebooks.
That'd be great. Also, frankly, if you've run across people that are also passionate that this is the wrong path to take, we'd love to hear from them too. So, thank you. Karen? Sure.
Not only the use in the classroom, but how their life and the things that they have to do are more efficient or effective or have been positively impacted.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me thank Charles and Dave. A lot of work has gone into this, and again, they have done a great job of emphasizing that we want input from staff to drive this rather than the top-down model. And so this may go a little slower than, again, some people feel is necessary, but I would disagree with that. I think this is the right way to do this, and I've seen a lot of examples across the country of districts doing it just the opposite, where the purchases are made, teachers are given the devices. Some major districts in this country that are now backing the bus up and saying, well, it's not working the way we thought, and now we don't know what to do after millions of dollars of investment. So I want to thank Dave and Charles and the presentation. The only thing I wish we had tonight, the example of Starbucks, it would have been great to have a pumpkin spice latte at some point during that demonstration, but, you know, just thought I'd mention that.
Charles does run the risk of being from now forever known as Pumpkin Spice, but So the next thing on our agenda is the approval of the November 26 board minutes. Are there any changes proposed to those minutes? Hearing none, then we'll let those minutes stand as presented. Oh, okay.
On page 6, it says maintenance of employees. It really should have been attract, hire, develop, and retain employees. So I can email Ellen.
I was going to say, since Ellen is not here
Yes.
and you are the secretary, You're responsible for getting
Okay,
that
but I
talent.
wanted to make sure that it was noted publicly.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Bloom, any changes to the November 26th minutes? No? Okay, all right, then we'll let them stand with that one change you pointed out. Next is board committee reports, Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Shannon?
We met last Monday and had 2 agenda items. One was the Mobile Learning Initiative, so
Thank
I
you
think
for
we covered that. The only other agenda item was prioritization of our long-term resource planning considerations. So this has been a project that the curriculum committee has been working on for a couple months, maybe a month or 2, I don't know. And it's a big project. It came about because we have a lot of priorities, I guess. I mean, we have a long list. Charles had compiled, it's probably 3 to 4 pages of enhancements, transformation to curriculum. And that all adds up to a lot of money. And so what we're trying to do is, if we have some years where there is another state payment, or, you know, the timing of certain revenue sources allows us to make some investments, small investments, that we would be ready with priorities ready to go with a prioritized list. So it's in process. There's really no update. I mean, at this point, you're coming up with a rubric to prioritize this list of curriculum instruction initiatives.
Correct. Today, we isolated 10 standards to evaluate initiatives on, and we created a rubric. It needs to be, it's just a first draft at this point. It's something I'd like to bring back to the CNI subcommittee to kind of as an update. Are these working out the way that has been envisioned by the subcommittee? So, but yeah, we've made some good progress on that rubric.
Questions?
All right, any questions for Shannon? Hearing none, let's move on to Finance and Operations Committee.
All right, I think we've covered the audited financial statements. A couple of highlights from our meeting. One, from a demographer request for proposal. I think Chris had outlined an RFP, shared that with us, that he is sending out. I think bids will be mid-January, second part of January, I think. So, and that was posted with the committee on board docs, if anybody's interested in seeing the draft. But is that correct? It's already out. All right, it's already out. So it's not even on board doc. It's on wherever. Where do you post those?
It's on the finance department's website,
Okay,
and we've sent it to 7 specific demographers.
sure. And you know, I think that becomes critically important, as we've talked before, particularly as it pertains to not just the ordinary changes that are going on in the district year to year, but the impact of the Berteau property, which we've talked about. It becomes that much more important as we talk about where the influx of kids could come from and where they go. And so that's going to be an important part of our long-term facility plan discussion. So just to let you know that we should be hearing back on proposals in mid to late January. We talked about the PMA projections as well, because as you know, we had talked about a baseline set of PMA projections, or a preliminary, I guess, set of PMA projections, the process going forward. And I think in the minutes it talks about some of the updates to assumptions that Chris is going to make, as well as looking at adding the funding for some staffing in the areas of support around technology, professional development, evaluations, et cetera. Some of the mandated things that the state has put upon us, and once again, not giving us resources to do, that are stressing our staff. And I think our desire is to get to a point where, I think if you just kept the district funded exactly the way it is, we would be declining. So these are things that are required for us to keep up with what we have. And so that we would look to have that to the board. One of the things that the administration said, they'd ask for a little more time on that. Originally, our 5-year plan kind of update cycle is in January. I think given where that plan is, I think the reason it was due in January was to make a staffing decision on RIFs for budget reasons. And I think we're approaching a comfort level that decision we can make, that we're not going to RIF for budget reasons. Therefore, we have a little more time to more fully develop our tool as we look out 5 years for this cycle. And so we've gone ahead, I think, and agreed to give the administration some more time to think about some of the assumptions that are going into that. We would look to bring that back to the full board in, I think, February, March timeframe. If that's right?
Yeah, we can probably get to you in January the basic staffing needs that are probably not discretionary. So that we can still meet that timeline. But the discretionary staffing, just to make sure, again, we go back and get input from all our stakeholders as we develop that list and talk about that. We just need more time to do that in a thorough manner, so.
Okay.
I'm envisioning February for that piece.
Okay, so we'll have that discussion. I just to manage expectations, we'll have that next discussion in February. And then the last piece, just as a heads up, Frank Hsu shared with us a letter. We had been approached by, and please, Chris, jump in and help me if I've got this wrong. A woman affiliated with the Illinois EPA as it relates to a potential grant for. Should I keep going here? Can I have Frank or Chris to tell me what? Sorry to put you on the spot, Frank, but I was going to butcher this.
We were actually approached by a gentleman from American Water. The north part of Elmhurst, the unincorporated area, does not have Elmhurst water for sanitary and water supply like most Elmhurst residents do, but they have American Water Supply at service. Conrad Fisher is adjacent to there, and while Conrad Fisher has Elmhurst water, the neighbors do not have that. They have flooding problems and such like the rest of Elmhurst, and American Water gets those same complaints that the city of Elmhurst gets in the rest of Elmhurst. So it was the representatives from American Water who approached us to file a grant with the EPA where we would be the sub-grantee or the co-grantee, if you will, of the grant. The grant is for to help relieve some of the flooding for the neighbors near Conrad Fisher. They asked to put some storm detention on our property. The grant would be to put detention underneath the existing blacktop playground area and then recover it with permeable pavers. So it would be similar to what we have at the parking lot at Hawthorne. The detention would be entirely underground and repaved for the same use that it has now.
And I think their question to us was just whether we would be interested in partnering with them or participating should they be granted a grant to do this. And I think at this stage our answer was sure, we would love to have that conversation.
Right, without committing the board to any unseen easement agreements or anything else that would come of this down the line. What we agreed to was, in principle, not ruling out being a co-signer on the grant, because obviously they wouldn't spend time and money putting the grant together and submitting it if there was no desire for us to have the storage on our property.
So Frank told us is that they felt that it was the right. They recommended that they go ahead and agree to participate should the grant come through. In that, it would be something that's fully paid for by the grant. It would be underwater storage with pavers, so there's no digging holes and flooding fields with it, and it's no cost to us. So I didn't see any reason to disagree with his recommended tack. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Then that's it.
Just curious, is that just seep in, or is there a dejector system, or what sort of?
Obviously, we only went as far as a letter of intent to pursue the grant. We haven't seen design. I don't know if there's a method for bringing detention from other sites to there, but I suspect it's mostly about just increasing the amount of water that falls in and around Conrad Fisher that can be brought into that site. So I imagine it's gravity fed.
Margaret?
and I know this is still at the proposal or thought process, but I'm wondering what Fisher staff and/or community members might have been involved in kind of like discussion on what this might look like and what this might mean from an operational basis for their school year.
Those kind of discussions haven't happened. I'll be honest with you. This development happened with American Water approaching us saying that there's this grant which we would have to file for within a week because it was coming up and they'd like to pursue it, and they just needed a letter from us saying that we would be interested in pursuing the possibility of what it would look like. So certainly before we had anything that looked like an actual plan or construction schedules or change of use or anything like that, those things would be discussed with staff, with administration, both at the school and here, and obviously with the board as well.
Yeah, just to be clear, there were no commitments. I mean, all this was is, would you be interested in having a discussion if we got the money? And we said, sure. So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of questions around, implications if we were to add to, I mean, all the things we're asking on stormwater and some of the other things that we're talking about. And so I just wanted to make the board aware that came up through committee, that, we said that we would be more than happy to participate in an ongoing discussion.
It also sounds like there'll be plenty of time through this process, should this come to fruition, that in our growing school district, we can make theoretical plans for additions to any building and just make sure that this would not be in the way of, within the footprint of any addition which might be added at some theoretical future date, so that, so that the district wouldn't incur any cost for moving that permeable paver or underground water storage system.
Yeah, and in fact, during the last phase of expansion at Conrad Fisher, the wing that has 3 hallways heading to the north now was designed with the intention of eventually adding 3 more classrooms on that wing if needed, and that would not interfere with or come near the existing space. And the other space where we've looked at possibly adding a theoretical addition of future, if that need were to arise, would be classroom and common lunchroom space on the south end of the building, which also wouldn't interfere with that. So,
Great. That's exactly the kind of thought that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear, I mean, there are no next steps until they come to us with the money. So the next step would be, we have the money, now let's talk. So until then, there's no need for us to do anything.
Thank you. Emily?
I wanted to, if we can, go back to the PMA projections that you said Chris Welton's going to update. Well, the number 3. So, and I have to play the new person card here because maybe this is a dumb question, but at our community forum in November, and then a few weeks ago when we were at York for our brown bag lunch that the board had with people at York, I feel like in both places we heard a lot about class size and doing things about class size. When do we have that discussion? If that's something that as a board we feel like we're hearing, and maybe is that a discussion, like you said, in February that we would, do I tell you right now? I mean, how does that communication that we feel like or I feel like I'm getting from the community, teachers, how does that then get to you guys as you start doing your projections and your staffing numbers for next year?
That's probably in the February discussion, because what you're going to see first is just a maintenance budget when it comes to staffing based on enrollment numbers that we're seeing rolling up both at elementary, middle school, and high school, with probably some relief on class size depending on the number of students and all of that, but not specifically to lower class size at this point, because again, it's a maintenance budget first that you want to build in. Then I think the board wants to see what that looks like and how much discretionary funding is available for enhancements on staffing, given the number of needs you have on personnel around the district. So I think the first thing is you have to be comfortable with what that number is for basic staffing for going into next year. And so that would be the first discussion in January.
And in addition to that, in terms of debriefing one another on the experiences that we've had as we travel to schools, that's an agenda item that you'll see shortly on our January kind of mid-year retreat that we're going to have.
And who attends this mid-year retreat?
You do.
I know I do.
along with the rest of us and Mr.
Dave,
Purnell.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so sorry, can I go to my next question?
Please.
So it looks like there's gonna be updates. When do we see those updated PMI projections?
On the maintenance budget,
No, well, it looks like there's gonna be some changes to the PMA projections.
as soon as we have the staffing numbers in, probably January. Emily,
Okay.
That's the date I'm talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. And then in February is when we see the maintenance budget.
No, you'll see kind of the maintenance budget on basically moving forward what we presently have, probably in January.
Okay.
Once we have discussed staffing, we've already had preliminary discussions, we will come back and say, okay, this is what it's going to cost us in the PMA projections, given this, especially staffing, because that's the big driver. This is what the maintenance budget looks like. Then based on that discussion in January, then we would come and start developing discretionary staffing and discretionary funding that we can discuss then in February.
Okay.
Depending, and again, you'll have hopefully an understanding and a comfort level of how much discretionary funding you want to talk about. Because, we can go from soup to nuts at this point when it comes to, our needs. But I think we have to be realistic in the discussion and say, where is that? And then, again, I feel obligated to go back to all of our stakeholders and say, okay, given this amount of money, where's this discretionary funding? What's the input for discretionary funding? What are our top priority needs? Based on a discussion with staff, with community, with parents, all that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Okay. The next on our agenda is the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through L. Just a quick summary. The A is the standard personnel report, and B is the financial reports that are presented to us every month. C is the approval to purchase a Cisco networking equipment to upgrade middle school local area networks. D, approval to open designated closed session minutes and keep all other closed session minutes closed. E, approval to authorize the destruction of verbatim recordings of closed session minutes as complies with the law in Illinois. F, approval of a donation of approximately $10,000 to Edison Elementary School from the Edison PTA. Includes about 10 iPads, a synchronizing and charging cart, and a MacBook Pro. G is the approval, and thank you to the Edison PTA for that. G is the approval of a donation to all of District 205 third grade students. This is the dictionary project that was started by Mrs. Mary French of Charleston, South Carolina, in, I believe, the mid-1990s. In 2004, the Elks Club and the Elks Club of Elmhurst became involved with the project. And the Elmhurst Elks Club has offered to give each third grader in our district a dictionary. Total cost of the donation about $1,200. And thank you to the Elks Club and Mrs. Mary French very much for that. H is the approval of a donation to Bryan Middle School. The Jewel Osco Company has had a grand reopening of the Jewel Osco at Butterfield in York, and they've had grand reopenings of many of their stores, and they are presenting 36 $1,000 checks to schools and nonprofits throughout the area that they serve. Brian is a recipient of one of those $1,000 checks, so our thanks go to Jewel Osco Corporation for that. Item I is the approval of a donation to all of our middle schools from the District 205 Foundation, worth about $7,000. The Nova 5000 devices that are already in our schools will be getting additional data loggers and other accessories to make them even more useful and aligned with our math and science curriculums in all three of our middle schools. So thank you very much to the District 205 Foundation. Item J is another donation to York High School. The Kiwanis Club has taken the security of schools in their communities as a item of their priority. So they are going to donate about $1,825 to York High School to be used for security enhancements.
Just one, if I could just correct that, I accepted that donation from Kiwanis, and it was really intended for the district.
Oh, thank
For
you.
overall safety and security.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Item K is the approval of revised policy 6:300 graduation requirements. That one is to increase the number of years of science required at the high school from 2 years to 3 years. So that would be an additional 2 credits to graduate. And then item L is the approval of revised policy 6:320, high school credit for proficiency. And that would eliminate the computer skills class requirement from the high school, leading to a net reduction of half a credit for graduation. So those are both second readings and adoptions of those policies. So we'll be increasing the graduating requirement for the class of 2018.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next year's entering freshman class, to increase the science requirement from 2 years to 3 years, and to eliminate the computer skills class from the high school. So those are items A through L. Does anyone want to eliminate any of those items? Mr. McDonough? Or John?
I'd like to pull item F for further discussion.
Okay. Now do I have a motion for? Somebody, please.
I move that we approve the superintendent's consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, G, H, I, J, K, L.
Okay. I have a second. All right. So moved by Karen, seconded by Emily, to approve the superintendent's consent agenda item A through E and items G through L. And this would require a voice vote, or a roll call vote, if I'm correct.
And I'm going to say yes for Mrs.
So,
Stufen.
all right, and then,
Okay, Ms. Bastido, second.
Yes.
Oops. Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebder,
Yes.
Mr. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
yes. So we have 7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. So I now need a motion for item F, please.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the approval of donation from Edison Elementary. Oh, I'm sorry, hang on one second.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that all you need? Okay. I didn't read the whole thing.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so moved by Shannon, seconded by Karen. Motion to approve the donation to Edison Elementary School from the Edison PTA, item F on the superintendent's consent agenda. Any discussion? John?
The reason that I pulled this and asked someone else to make the motion on it is so that I could offer an amendment on it. Capturing on our discussion regarding not committing too quickly to platform and environment, it's a large decision. And echoing what I said before about making sure we're not duplicating, I wanted to offer the amendment that would have the same motion except to remove the iPod designation. And my reason for doing this is because of where we are, given this discussion in terms of transition. I wanted to open up the opportunity to discuss options with the donors, to tell them the story that we heard tonight, to tell them the point of transition that we're in. It's up to them. If they want the specific gift, they want us to do Apple, that's fine. That's a condition of their gift. but we don't necessarily need to see the results of that communication. By removing the iPod designation, we in a sense delegate that decision. It would allow us to accept the gift and to have that discussion, have the administration have that discussion with the donors regarding what they wanted to do, and give the flexibility to go either way. So in a way, it opens up the gift to more opportunities without having to come back to the board.
Ask for Mr. Purnell's input in a second, but Karen, go ahead.
Can I ask a point of clarification? When you say iPod, you mean iPads, correct?
sorry.
Because,
Yes.
okay, just.
iPad. So it's the exact same motion with the word iPad removed. It's for
Okay.
devices and technology, I believe. Where is
Yes,
that?
it is.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't.
Any,
Yeah, my first reaction is, I believe that if there's reservations about accepting this donation in its present form, in fairness to the donators who are contributing to this, taking off the designation of iPads significantly changes the intent of this donation. And I think just in the case of open communication, you would probably not want to accept this donation tonight and ask that it, re-meet with the Edison PTA, explain, the rationale for not specifically saying iPads in the donation and see if they want to reconsider. I just think having that communication would be better than just the board tonight deciding to change the designation and to cross out iPads. I think we need communication with the PTAs on that.
This is just simply removing a limitation on our acceptance. If they, in their discussion, say, yes, we want it to be iPad, this revised recommendation would allow you to accept it without coming back to the board. So, in other words, whatever the result of that discussion is, you don't need to come back to the board.
Karen, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Purnell, but during the mobile learning presentation, I thought I heard that this donation would actually help us to do a pilot at potentially 5th grade level, and that would then, give us some direct input feedback as to use in classroom and with the teachers. Did I miss that?
I'm going to ask Charles or David, they reviewed the proposal.
I may have been unclear. I don't really see this as a pilot at 5th grade. We need to figure out a way to showcase Chromebooks to 5th grade. We already have iPads in the schools. I think that they're confident that they could use this device, the iPads.
The other thing I guess I'll point out is well, let me ask David and Charles. I mean, how far away, if we were to move forward with Chromebooks, how many years away are we from seeing Chromebooks in our elementary schools?
We've made no real plan at this point to start moving in that direction. We've still got a lot of work to do for high school. I think that all along we've envisioned that we could make good, solid movement at middle school. The high school's kind of complicated because there's more of direct costs on families, and we were very conscious of that impact.
Sure.
And the other, if I could just add, the other factor is the district, the taxpayers, the board just invested in relatively new laptop technology, not last summer, but the summer before, at the elementary level. So there was quite a bit of investment there. It did increase the access from what we had before, but it isn't, it isn't one-to-one, but it certainly is an improvement in access. So I think another thought, just if you think about the technology refresh cycles and the opportunities that come in waves, that the next opportunity is at the middle school level, and then sometime after that would be an opportunity to invest at the elementary. Now, it doesn't necessarily have, everything doesn't have to tie to a wave like that, but we definitely have device refresh decisions that we need to make in other areas first before the elementary level comes. So that just buys a little bit of time to be able to talk to the K-5 level, work out a longer range vision, and then come up with an implementation plan.
Yeah, and John, I see the point of your amended motion, just that it would give the administration all sorts of flexibility. I guess the question that I have for it is, my understanding is the principal at Edison has a very defined use for these iPads that they're proposing, and that sounds like at least a decent ways off from any coordinated Chromebook implementation, if there were to be any at the elementary school level. That in fact, by the time that came around, these iPads would be well used.
My only point was, if you were to talk to the donors and said, is it really iPad that you really want to make sure every kid has iPad? Or do you want to kind of fit into some of the things and some of the pilots that are going on here? I think they'd probably kind of look and say, well, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to give you what you need. And my only point was to remove a limiting thing to iPad. Now, you got to buy iPad. I noticed that the things haven't been bought. It's a donation of money for this. And I was just trying to spur the discussion between the donor and the donee, given this very, detailed discussion we had tonight. If the motion goes through, it works either way. Whereas if the motion doesn't go through, it only works one way. So
I see that point.
The other concern I have, John, is that, again, we're a ways away from having even a discussion on a pilot on the Chromebooks. So right now, I can't go to the PTA and say there's another viable option here. Number one. Number two, we have required the principals to put together proposals in a process when they approach us that makes sense to us in the district at the present time for the purchase of whatever technology it is. Jim and his staff has done that with the PTA support. They have presented a proposal to David and Charles. David and Charles have accepted that proposal as viable, as worthwhile, and all of that. So, again, I understand, the flexibility issue, and that may be really a great discussion to have in the future when these PTAs come to us to say, can we have this discussion first to go forward? On this one, however, just given the timing and the fact that we don't have a definitive model at the elementary schools yet, we're probably a little ways away from having that. I just think it's not advantageous to do it at this time, at this moment in time. But certainly I can see coming down the future, having those discussions and say, let's talk about this donation and give us more flexibility when it comes to the technology donation pieces, because it's a moving target and we may want to use it in some other way.
I truly appreciate it. One of the things I've always tried to say is I'd like to have our technology plan as a target when people are looking to help us. Say, here's the list of things that we think will change education. And if you can tick off one of these, it would be great. That may have already happened on a local level at the Edison School, and I totally appreciate that. And so I'll leave it up to the board if the will of the board is not to go with that, and that's fine.
The other thing you need to know is we've had this discussion with the PTAs in general. That list of technology ideas I have distributed and talked about at the PTA meetings. So, that is part of it, including access points, including security cameras. There's a cafeteria kind of smorgasbord of technology needs that we have asked the PTAs to consider. So that's in front.
That's what my question was about, that you have gone to them with a list that does not include iPads, but has things like security cameras, Wi-Fi access points. So there is a list.
Yes, and they have received that list.
I apologize. Does the list not include iPads, or does it include iPads?
Does not specifically include iPads. It's not, again, in our technology plan, our first priority was access points. Again, and Dave explained and Charles explained why access points are so important. Part of it, though, depends on where the building is and whether they have access points or not. Some of the buildings have already donated access points, so they're not looking at the next level. The next level includes printers at local printers at the libraries, security cameras, all of that. We have presented that as suggestions for the PTA. However, the other thing is if the principals, again, working with their staffs, have a proposal for technology and it happens to include iPads, as this one does, then there is a process they go through to get tentative administrative approval, and this is one of those that has come forward. The other thing I want to, when you look at this, it's not a huge infusion of iPads. It's 10 iPads along with an iMac and a charging station. So it's a small iPad donation.
Chris?
I think it's also important to point out that, again, the device in this case is somewhat irrelevant. What's very interesting is the platform that they're using, the plan that they've put together with the way they deliver education, and it's a very interesting pilot. So, whether it's iPads or whatever else for the next 3 years, I don't think it changes. That platform or that piece may be a very interesting piece, which would probably work on Chromebooks as well. Having that pilot going, I think there's a huge advantage to it, regardless of whether it's run on a Chromebook or an iPad. In this case, it's just easier to do it this way.
John?
I guess I'm looking for the will of the board. And if that means a motion, I'll make the motion and we could vote on it, or you can do it more informally and I'll withdraw if it doesn't pass.
Collectively, what do we think?
Yeah, there's already
There,
a motion.
yes, there is. So, okay. Do we have a second to that motion? Did we have a second? We didn't have a second to the motion, so we actually don't have a motion on the floor. We did. So I'm giving John the opportunity, if you want to remake that motion, see if we have a second. Otherwise, if you want to withdraw that, we can take it as proposed.
I guess what I'm saying, is there a motion pending or not?
But we don't have a second on the motion.
Okay. Not
Let's
hearing
just
us,
start over then.
not hearing a second on the motion.
Yeah, we actually jumped the gun. Is there a second to John's motion? At least not from Mrs.
No, it's
Evans.
not. Time out. No, there was a motion. There was a motion to approve item F and a second, then discussion, and then John asked to amend the motion, right?
So
So there is a
Right.
motion on the floor.
Oh,
Is there a
I'm
motion?
This
sorry,
was
you're right.
during
You're right.
Is there a
Thank you
motion to
for-
amend pending? I'm asking the chair. If there's a motion to
No one
amend,
seconded
Or do you
his
have to
motion.
turn this down and then re-motion?
All right, so no one seconded your motion to amend.
right.
There is a motion pending to approve item F.
Right. And this is my, I appreciate all donations and the recognition. Based off this discussion, I'm wondering, is there a challenge or concern in going back and having, the conversation that we had here at the table with the group at Edison, be it the administration?
I think what I heard here tonight is that
This has already been
there's been a discussion. There's a definitive plan in place. That it is an interesting plan that the administration would like it to, would approved it moving forward, and that the administration's current effort toward Chromebooks is at the high school and the middle school, and then the elementary schools would follow. That am I correct? And please correct me if this is an incorrect statement. But am I correct that you say, well, really, there's no alternative plan in place or a reasonable plan that you could create to substitute Chromebooks for iPads within this donation if you had the opportunity?
That would be true. Actually, as Dr. Johns alluded to earlier, even the Google App environment isn't even established for the K-5 level at this point in time. So we don't even have the platform in place to support any, the Google Docs environment for students. So we have a lot of work to do at the K-5 environment to even be ready for that.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's extremely well intentioned, and so would certainly provide the administration and the Edison PTA a lot of discussion room, but it sounds like it's almost a moot point because of where technology lies at the moment. And Margaret, please.
And I'm sorry, and my question is not necessarily Chromebooks versus iPads. My discussion is more of, as I heard the litany of items that we have proposed to be purchased, I didn't hear that even iPads was on that list. So I don't know if iPads should be added.
The thing at Edison, all of the access points have already been donated.
And are they also okay on the security and the printers?
Mr. Pernod saying no, they're not.
No, they aren't. So this begs the question, though. How much do the PTAs have, if they go through the process and have a proposal and go through the choice, do PTAs expect reasonably that their donation would be approved? Or is there another step at the board level that we would have to put in place before we get to this point? Because in fairness, if I'm a parent at a PTA and I've gone through all of the procedures and now I get to the board level and the board level says, well, thank you, but now we have reservations, I think it begs us to have that conversation prior to any kind of discussion of changing the donation in its content for those PTAs.
It's not changing the donation. It's asking if they would reconsider. What I hear is we put a list out there of things that we needed, and they said, no, I want to give this. And what I was trying to do was to be grateful, to say, yes, we're grateful for everything you're doing, and to go back to that discussion with them that says, these are the things that we really need. If you insist on iPad, then yes, take the iPad. But if it's not on the list, I was trying to open up that discussion so that it could continue. But by all means, it's not my intention to make it there. This is in many ways a great gift. Look at this. It has the iPads. It has iPad charging, syncing card. It has staff training. And it deals with the teachers. And so in a lot of ways it's good, but I just wanted to continue the discussion since it didn't happen to be on the list.
Karen?
So are we making the assumption, this is a small school, so they might be fine with printers, and this was a district-wide list, right? And what they do is they look at what does that school need? Or I don't want us to draw assumptions either and make more work when it's going to come back with the same result.
Again, the list that I gave to the PTAs were, quote, suggestions on where they could donate technology and where needs are. I think my position is PTAs are independent support agencies of the school district. I do not want to I don't think we as a district nor the board wants to get into, well, if you don't support what's on our list, we're not interested. I don't think that's a position we want to be in. We hope they consider what suggestions we have. But again, there was still another avenue that if they felt, working with the principal and the staff, there was another opportunity to support technology in the building, they would go through the technology department, the curriculum department would have a sign-off, we would approve that proposal, and then bring that to the board as something we could support. So that is where it's at. The other problem here is, again, even if I went to them and said at this point in time, we want you to consider an alternative, the alternative right now is not viable when it comes to Chromebooks or Google framework. And to go back and say, would you consider the other options, they've already kind of decided they wanted to go iPads rather than security cameras or whatever the other suggestions were.
I'll just withdraw the motion.
Fair enough.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Well, at the elementary level, why not have the iPad on the list if there's no other alternative for devices? Is there?
I think it's the difference between accepting them and seeking them, right?
Yeah, I think that's sort of where we're trying to define with the K-5 constituents in terms of what do they want the learning environment to look like, what are they trying to accomplish for instruction, and that's the picture that we're trying to develop with them. So to put that on the list would sort of put the cart before the horse. We want to have the conversation with K-5 stakeholders.
done the security cameras or printers? I don't know. It's just, maybe it's another discussion. It doesn't have to be solved tonight.
I think that list is probably too new to answer that question.
I mean, we have got donations for access points, so that was the rollout for last year. Now, I think one of the things that's probably going to slow down the donation of access points, quite frankly, is our discussion tonight where we're saying we're probably going to install access points district-wide by the end of this year. So if I'm a PTA right now, why am I going to donate access points when the district's going to do that by the end of the year? So I think they're looking for other alternatives. Again, we've given them a list, but again, I don't want to dictate to the PTAs how they want to donate their funding unless that's the direction the board and the district wants to take.
Emily?
I just wanted to add, this list is really new, so I think we should continue thinking about the list, working on the list, and a good time when we, as liaisons to our individual schools, when we go to the PTA meetings at the beginning of the year, when we go next fall, we could talk to them about the list, make sure they are aware of it, because that's before they've done any of their fundraising. And I really do believe if we give these PTAs these lists, because I'm not prepared to turn down any donations. I understand why these parents donate money to their child's school. But if we give them a list, I think they would be happy to have goals that they can work towards. And I do think we'll start to see more donations in accordance with what we've asked for and what our goals are. So I think we just need to keep working on the list. And then as school board members with our liaison schools, make sure they are aware of them.
Okay, so back to the motion on the floor for the approval of donation of item F. We need a roll call vote.
We're doing it from the original,
From the original, yeah,
which was me and Shannon. Okay, sorry.
it's okay.
I'm going to say yes. Oops. Mrs. Ebner.
Yes.
Ms. Bastido.
Yes.
Mr. Bloom.
Yes.
Dr. Harrell.
Yes.
Mr. McDonough.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes, so that's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion carries after some good discussion. The next on our list, or on our agenda, is the superintendent's agenda, the action items. The approval of the resolution for the 2013 Certificate of Levy, and the approval of a resolution to instruct the county clerk how to apportion the 2013 tax levy extension reductions.
You will need a motion and a second on each item, and then you will need a roll call vote for each one of these resolutions, so you should take them one at a time.
John?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution for the 2013 Certificate of Levy.
Do I hear a second? Seconded by Margaret. Any discussion on the approval for the 2013 Certificate of Levy? Hearing none. Karen?
Okay, Mr. McDonough.
Yes.
Dr. Harrell.
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes.
Mr. Bloom.
Yes.
Ms. Bastido.
Yes.
Ms. Stufen, yes, and Mr. Collins.
Yes. So that's 7 ayes, no nays. That motion on the Certificate of Levy carries. Now I'm looking for a motion for the next item. John?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution to instruct the county clerk how to apportion 2013 tax levy extension reductions.
Do I hear a second? Seconded by Karen. So, moved by John, seconded by Karen, the approval of the resolution to instruct the county clerk on how to apportion 2013 tax levy extension reductions. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Karen, can you take the roll?
Yes. Mr. McDonough.
Yeah.
Mrs. Stufen, yes. Mr. Bloom.
Yes.
Dr. Harrell.
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner.
Yes.
Ms. Bastido.
Yes.
And Mr. Collins.
Yes. 7 ayes, no nays. That motion carries. Next on our agenda is the upcoming meetings, all of which occur in the rooms we are in today. Next meeting is Wednesday, January 8th, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting at 7 p.m. Tuesday, January 14th, our regular Board of Education meeting at 7:30 p.m. Wednesday, January 15th, the special Board of Education meeting, our mid-year retreat update at 7:30 p.m. Tuesday, January 21st, Finance and Operations Committee meeting at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, January 22nd, our Policy Committee meeting at 7 p.m. And Tuesday, January 28th, the regular Board of Education meeting at 7:30 p.m. Next on our agenda is board communications. Not only board updates, but item A today is the a little discussion behind the Berteau property site, any development that should occur there, the impact. The point here is to have a discussion and about, were you to build 50 or 60 homes on the former hospital campus on Berteau Street, the impact to our school district. We've done a little research here. So, where do we want to start with this?
Can we just restate what has occurred to this point, so we can just get everyone on target with what has happened up to this point?
The school district and the park district expressed to the city and to the hospital that they would have an interest in a portion of the land. If we had discussed in closed session that if we were to, even though the law would not require us to go to a referendum, if we certainly did buy a piece of land with the intent someday to build a school, probably the right thing to do would be go to referendum. That idea did not have the full support of the board, so we decided not to go that way. The park district would be interested in swapping some land on that current site. And the current site, approximately 11 acres are owned by the Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, and there's about roughly 3.5 acres of a buffer zone that's owned by the city. I know the park district has expressed interest in the city in perhaps swapping some land that the city has their eye on for flood control in Golden Meadows Park, or floodwater retention, I should say, for some of the land, or for all the land that the city controls on that site. And then further swapping, because there are soccer fields at Golden Meadow Park. So the idea is that you would create soccer fields on that site. The topography of the land that the city currently owns on that land is not conducive to soccer fields. So you have to go one further step and swap, if a developer buys the land, or swap with the hospital for a corner of the property that is flat and more conducive to building soccer fields. We have expressed and discussed in closed session the interest in then perhaps entering into an intergovernmental agreement that would give the school district the option in the future to swap land with the park district in case we ever found a need to build a school on that site. We would then, of course, have to go to referendum, get the voter approval to spend the money to build a structure there, and because it would occupy children. We need to go to referendum if there is debt involved, or if it involves putting students in a school building. So that would involve a referendum on our part. It would simply, in our growing school district, give us options in the future. Tonight we discussed and approved going ahead with putting out to bid the potential employment of a demographer to figure out what the growth projection of our district looks like. We're at the end of the current demographer, the CASARTA, that the district hired several years ago, and we're looking to hire a demographer to bring us up to date and give us an idea of what our growing district looks like from there, we can, we can come up with a plan for what facilities are needed and approximately when they would be needed, and we can communicate that with the community. So is that kind of the update you're looking for?
Thank you. And I just think it's important for us all to make sure we understand what has occurred thus far as we go and talk about what potential next steps are.
I know the city and the Park District are talking about that potential land swap. I've talked to the Park District president about the intergovernmental agreement that would go on from there. Both our organization, their organization, are supportive of that. I guess the question, if you were to build 50 or 60 houses on that site, Field School doesn't have the current capacity. Now, clearly, there's a bunch of assumptions to be made. How big are those houses? How many bedrooms? And who buys them? And how many kids do they have, right? So there's a whole lot of assumptions that are purely assumptions currently. But what we know is that Field School has a very limited capacity to accept any more students today. So I think we would have to realistically look at redrawing some boundary lines of our elementary schools in order to accommodate more children. We have some schools that are just absolutely full, and the schools that are absolutely full, some have a little classroom space available, but they have no lunchroom space. And then we have other schools that do have some capacity. So we would need to be good stewards of the community and redraw some boundary lines to utilize the space that we have before we start talking about building buildings or building additions onto existing buildings. So that, Chris?
I also echo, this is not, we don't have a choice from the standpoint of, it's not like it would be nice for us to reserve a piece of land in case someday we wanted to do something. It's that if we're going to put significant numbers of kids into that parcel, it is going to impact our schools. It's going to impact Field. And our options are greatly reduced if we don't have any space to go to. And that impact, lest anybody, misunderstand, when you look at, we presented a spreadsheet the last board meeting, the operational impact to us, in some cases, yes, you will put the property back on the tax rolls, but the revenue from putting the property back on the tax rolls is significantly less than the cost of what we could project the number of kids that those houses may have in them. So this is not, a net benefit to the school district. It is not economic development, for the taxpayer. So just, I just want to make sure that, that everybody understands that this isn't not a net plus to us. And so we have to deal with it, and we have to, react in some cases, but we have to have some vision, because we don't want to be here 3 years from now with a bunch of kids showing up on Field's doorstep without any kind of a plan. So we need our plan updated. I think those numbers are posted. With the last board meeting, I think we've been circulating these around just to educate the public on the impact that it has on us. Fortunately, the discussions with the city and the Park District seem to be going in a direction that may give us some flexibility, and I think we should continue to have those discussions to maximize the flexibility that we have to react to what happens on that piece of land.
I think you bring up a couple good points. First of all, we're reasonably 3 years away from anything happening there. In terms of people moving in with children to enroll in our schools. But we have to get ahead of it. We have to plan for it. Certainly we know it. We're at least reasonably assured that it's coming, so it can't catch us by surprise. We need to start planning now. And if you look at the spreadsheet that is on the last meeting's posting, and help me with some numbers here,
Actually,
Chris.
it's again here, I think, on the Finance Committee update on this current board docs. It's also posted
It is,
there.
okay,
So, yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much. So if you build and help me with the numbers, a $750,000 house, the school district would collect about $12,000 in property taxes. Is that correct?
About 12,500, yes.
Yeah, okay. And it costs, we spend on average about $12,700 per kid per year to educate them. So if you moved one kid in to each house, that breaks even for us. You move more than one kid in, and it, is no longer a break-even situation. Now, over time, perhaps the kids grow up, they move out, parents stay there, and there's no kids to educate. Over a long period of time, it works itself out. Unfortunately, life is a cash flow problem, and while those kids move in and they're in our schools, it is more of an expense for the school district than we would receive in revenue. Again, it all goes with your assumption of how many kids will move into each of those houses. And then I think also that spreadsheet contains some information for once you have to start building additions or new buildings, what it costs per square foot, and the impact on the school district. So.
Yeah, and I think the point of the discussion in the last meeting too was to inform the numbers. I think the city council may begin discussions on impact fee or taking another look at the impact fee, helping us out with that. And I think we've armed them with some of the data to support what the impact is on us, and look forward to having that discussion on updating that fee.
Yeah, and we'll reach out to them and offer to have those discussions and share these numbers with them. John?
I don't think I've heard, has anyone any information about whether there's been action by the city council to start the process of reviewing its impact fee? Does anyone know whether that has occurred?
I do not. But in the last finance committee meeting, I got tasked with contacting the city, which I'm happy to do and I will do.
I just want to stress the urgency of the city, of our need to have the city pick this up, look at it, and to take action so that any change can be applied to this development. It would be very, very hard on the school district if this development were to pass through with the existing impact fee. And I think what you laid out in the numbers is evidence of that.
Yeah, we'll have that discussion as soon as practical. Anything else we want to add? Karen?
We have already shared the impact fees with the city, and they have the documents, et cetera.
Yes, they have copies of our spreadsheet, by the way, yes.
That they're working on it.
Okay. Are there any other board updates, board communications? Okay, hearing none. That brings us to the end of our meeting agenda. Seeing nothing else, I declare this meeting adjourned.